students, welcome to the next session of the chapter Animal Kingdom. Let me remind you that in the previous classes we have gone through the introduction and the basis of classification to go with the characteristics and the classification of the phylum Porifera. So which was an invertebrate phylum. So now further, today we are going to discuss about one more invertebrate phylum, that is Coelenterata. Dear students, first and foremost thing which you need to remember here is that the organisms which belong to the phylum Coelenterata are referred to as coelenterates. So these coelenterates are the first multicellular organisms. Among all the phylums of animal kingdom, when we consider the coelenterates are the first multicellular organisms. In fact, we can further say that they are the first true multicellular organisms. So this is also very important to note. Dear students, other than this, let me tell you the contribution of scientists in describing the phylum Coelenterata is also essential for us to understand. We have firstly Leucott. He is the scientist who is responsible for describing this phylum. So he described the Coelenterata. Further, let me tell you one interesting aspect here. He, alongside the coelenterates, he also included the poriferans or the sponges and also the ctenophores along with the Coelenterata. So that was done by Leucott. Further, one more scientist by name Hatschek. So this scientist described the coelenterates in more appropriate manner. In fact, he did not include the sponges or the poriferans and the ctenophores. He described the coelenterates separately. So the scientists who are noteworthy to mention here are Leucott and Hatschek. Furthermore, my dear friends, there are about 9,000 species included under the phylum Coelenterata. So, as we observed, we had around 5,000 species approximately in poriferans. Here, we have around 9,000 species of coelenterates. So, further, these coelenterates are referred to as stinging animals. They are referred to as stinging animals. I'll tell you why in the coming general characteristic features. Furthermore, these coelenterates also secrete a skeleton called as coral. So these corals, in fact, this is the skeleton which is secreted in the coelenterates. So these corals accumulate to form the coral islands, or even you can say the coral reefs. Generally, they are found in the sea waters. So these are few important introductory points about the invertebrate phylum, the second invertebrate phylum, the first true multicellular organisms, that is the coelenterates. Dear students, next let us move on to the general characteristics of the phylum Coelenterata. So here, let me tell you that as we have already known about this coelenterate introduction, they are the first true multicellular organisms among the animal kingdom. And when we talk about their habitat, that is their living or the dwelling place, when we consider, most of the coelenterates are aquatic forms. So they live in the water. So when we consider water means here, they can be present in the marine waters or they can also be present in the freshwater habitats. So under marine, let me give you a few examples. Firstly, we have here Physalia. Along with Physalia, we can also consider Obelia, and to go with this, we can also consider the Aurelia, Metridium, etc. So all these are the marine forms of coelenterate. When we consider the freshwater coelenterate, so we are well aware of Hydra. The best example which we can bring out here. Hydra is a freshwater coelenterate. So to go with this, let us understand their habit. How is their behavior in their habitat? So that is what is the habit. So here they can be free swimming. When I say free swimming, they can swim freely in the sea water, and they can be sessile. Sessile here refers to getting attached to a particular substratum permanently. That is what sessile. So we can find the sessile coelenterates as well. To go with this, even they can be solitary. Solitary when I say, so this means to say they live alone without depending on their neighborhood. Or other than the solitary, they can also be colonial. In the colonies as well we can find the coelenterate organisms. So moving ahead, let us also understand their body organization. So in the previous class I have talked about the invertebrate phylum Polymorphism, which were having the cellular grade of organization. Here we are talking about coelenterates which have the tissue grade of organization. So when I say tissue grade of organization, so let me tell you, dear students, that here the cells are organized to form the tissues, and the tissues perform the overall activities of the body. So this is about their body organization. Now other than that, let us also consider their body symmetry. So almost all the organisms here are radially symmetric. So when I say radial symmetry, all of us know that the organism can be divided into two equal halves from any plane passing through the center. So that is what is radial symmetry, which is shown by these organisms, that is the coelenterates. Dear students, next characteristic we have here is the body wall. The body wall of the coelenterates is diploblastic in nature. When I say diploblastic, let me tell you, the body of the coelenterates is made up of the outer ectoderm and the inner endoderm. So when I say the ectoderm, so it forms the outermost body wall. Endoderm forms the inner body wall. So as there are two body walls, it is diploblastic in nature. The ectoderm can also be referred to as the outer epidermis. So endoderm is also referred to as inner gastrodermis. Dear students, in between the outer epidermis and the inner gastrodermis, there is non-cellular region, so which we refer it to as the mesoglia. So generally, let us say for example, if we consider Hydra, the freshwater coelenterate, in the Hydra, the non-cellular region, that is the mesoglia, present in between the outer epidermis and the inner gastrodermis, is made up of mucopolysaccharides, the sugars. It is made up of the complex sugars. So this is about the body wall. Further, let us also try to understand what are the different cells which can be present in the outer epidermis and the inner gastrodermis. Firstly, let us move to the epidermis. So here it is made up of various types of cells. Firstly, epithelio-muscular cells. Secondly, it is also made up of glandulomuscular cells. to go with the interstitial cells, sensory cells, nerve cells, and alongside nerve cells we can also find the germ cells. So these are the different types of cells which come under the epidermis. Here, so when I am referring to the epitheliomuscular cells, general contraction functions will be performed. Glandulomuscular cells, it has glands, so we already know glands secrete the different types of hormones necessary for various functions. Interstitial cells, these are the types of cells, in fact, which are totipotent here. When I say totipotent, dear students, remember that these cells give rise to all the other tissues and the organs of the body. So hence it is interstitial we refer it to as. Sensory cells. These sensory cells will transmit and receive the impulses. So transmission and receiving the impulses is performed by the sensory cells. We have nerve cells. These nerve cells conduct the nerve impulses. They conduct the nerve impulses, dear friends. Finally, we have the germ cells. These are the cells, as already we know, help in the formation of the gametes. That is, the male gamete, the sperm, and the female gamete, that is the ova. So even in the case of the second type, that is the inner gastrodermis, we can find the endotheliomuscular cells, so which helps in the contraction of muscles, which is very important for the movement of the tentacles, movement of the body of the coelenterate. So they also have endothelio gland cells. They help in secretions, different secretions, and they also do have the interstitial cells, sensory cells, nerve cells, as well as the germ cells. So these are few important aspects when we talk about the important characteristic feature, the body wall. The next characteristic we have here is, dear students, coelenteric cavity. So let me tell you the body cavity or the coelenteric cavity of the coelenterate. Here it is referred to as coelenteron or gastrovascular cavity. So this coelenteron or the gastrovascular cavity is blind at one end. When I am referring to blind, let me tell you that one of the side of this, in fact, the coelenteron or the gastrovascular cavity is not having any opening at all. In one more end, dear students, we have mouth, the only opening which is present. So the mouth serves both the purposes, that is ingestion, that is intake of the food, and secondly egestion, that is outward movement of the body waste. So this is about the coelenteric cavity. Moving ahead, let me tell you the next character, that is they have tentacles. So when we are considering the tentacles, see these tentacles, where they are present, let us understand. See, mouth, in fact, which is situated on the hypostome. So what we say, the oral tip in simple sense, as is surrounded by the long, slender and hollow structures. These long, slender and hollow structures are what we call it as tentacles. So mouth is in fact surrounded by these tentacles. The epidermis of these tentacles, dear friends, is made up of, the epidermis of these tentacles has two types, in fact the specialized cells in them. So these special cells are called as nidoblasts, or we can also refer them to as stinging cells, or even we can refer them to as nematoblasts. These nidoblasts or the stinging cells or the nematoblasts have stinging capsule in them. Stinging capsules in them, which are referred to as the nematocysts, or we can also say them also as nematocytes. So these nematocysts or the nematocytes, which are the stinging capsules present in the special cells called stinging cells or the nidoblasts, are important for capturing their prey, paralyzing activities of the prey. So to go with this, even not only this, attachment to the prey, and it also helps in offense and defense, to attack and to protect themselves from the predator, that is defense, to attach to their respective prey, or to paralyze the prey, to in fact to feed on them, or in fact even directly to capture the prey. The nematocysts or the nematocytes, which are the stinging capsules present in the nidoblasts or the stinging cells, are very much necessary. The next characteristic we have here is the skeleton of the coelenterate. Let me tell you, my dear students, the skeleton may be present or may be absent. If present, generally it is external. Outside the body we can find the skeleton. This skeleton can be made up of either calcium carbonate. So if it is made up of calcium carbonate, we call them to as inorganic skeleton, or it may be even formed of keratin, so which is generally organic. So remember both these aspects. So it can be either inorganic skeleton, that is formed of calcium carbonate, or organic, formed of keratin. And so to go with this, dear friends, let us also understand their digestive system or the digestion process. So digestion can be both intracellular, or it can also be extracellular in some. So intra means inside the cells the digestion may occur, or outside the cell. Extra means outside the cell the digestion may occur, but it generally occurs in the coelenteron. So next, let us say we have, other than the digestion, the excretion and respiration, which is not so well developed, yet this occurs by an important process called as diffusion. So generally through gaseous exchange, the excretion and respiration is seen here. So furthermore, let me also tell you the sensory structures which are present in few of the coelenterates. When I am talking about sensory structures, some coelenterates, either they may have eye spots, or they may have statocysts. So these are the special structures which are important to maintain the equilibrium of the body. So other than the sensory structures, if we have the next important characteristic of the coelenterates, we have here is the nerve tissues or the nerve cells. So generally they are represented here by nerve net, so which is made up of unipolar neurons. When I say unipolar, they have only one process, either one dendrite or one axon may be present, through which the impulses will be carried. So these are few characters, that is we have discussed about the skeleton, which is generally external if present, made up of calcium carbonate or keratin. Digestion can be intracellular, that is inside the cell, or extracellular, outside the cell, but occurs in the coelentron. Excretion and respiration, that is the physiological processes, occur by diffusion. Sensory structures in some can be present, either it can be eye spots or statocysts, so which help in maintaining the body equilibrium. To go with, the nervous system is generally not so well developed, it is not present in fact. So if present, generally it is in the form of nerve net, so which is made up of the unipolar neurons. Dear students, the next important characteristic of the coelenterate is polymorphism. First of all, let me tell you that coelenterates exist in, or they exhibit, two body forms, or we can also refer them to as zooids, or in simple sense as individuals. So these body forms are polyp and medusa. Let me tell you, polyp, which is one type of body form or one type of zooid. So this can be seen in hydra, which is generally sessile. When I say sessile, attached to the substratum and cylindrical in nature. We have medusa, which for example we can find in Aurelia or the jellyfish. So here it is umbrella shaped, and to go with that, it is free swimming. So as we can find Aurelia or the jellyfish, which is generally free swimming in nature, hydra, which is generally attached to the substratum. So hydra is a polyp form, and Aurelia or the jellyfish is a medusa form. So in few cases, as in the case of Physalia, so which is an animal which belongs to the phylum coelenterate, referred to as Portuguese man of war. So this Portuguese man of war or the Physalia shows more than two forms. More than two forms it shows. Hence we can say Physalia is the best example for polymorphism. So what is polymorphism? Any individual or this zooid which shows more than two alternative forms is referred to as the polymorphism, which is shown by Physalia. So let me tell you polymorphism, why it is essential. For example, if we consider this Portuguese man of war, here it is essential for division of labor. It exists in various forms. Each form divides, the body form divides its work. So it helps in division of labor. So further, dear friends, let me also tell you these coelenterates show metagenesis, or we can also refer it to as alternation of generation. So what do we mean by this? So basically, now I have said the two body forms, that is the polyp and the medusa. So both these forms can be exhibited by a single organism, the polyp as well as the medusa. As in the case of, see, Obelia, we can find alternation of generation or the metagenesis. That is, the polyp forms the medusa and medusa again forms the polyp. So polyp forms the medusa through asexual means and medusa forms the polyp through sexual means. So what is happening here? Alternatively, the polyp and medusa are formed, they are alternating with each other. That is the reason why we call them as alternation of generation or the metagenesis, which can be seen with respect to Obelia. Moving on to the next characteristic, that is reproduction. Dear students, here reproduction can be both sexual as well as asexual. When I say sexual, let me tell you that the sexual reproduction here occurs by the union of the gametes. That is, the male gametes and the female gametes have to come together that is the sperm and ova have to fuse together to form the offspring. So further we have the asexual reproduction, so which is generally occurs here in case of coelenterate through budding. So both we can say that both we can find asexual as well as the sexual type of reproduction. To go with this, let us also understand the development. So when I say indirect development, we know that they have to pass through the larval stages. They have to undergo the metamorphic changes. That is, the larval stages till the adult is formed, so many in fact changes in between can be seen. So that is what we call metamorphic changes or metamorphosis. So indirect development shows that. So here the larval stage is generally planula. So other than this, dear friends, they also exhibit regeneration. So regeneration is to say that when any of their body part is lost, is cut, so again it can be reformed, regenerated. That characteristic is also seen here, dear friends. So remember, so these are few important characteristic features of the invertebrate phylum, that is the coelenterate. Dear students, moving on to the classification of coelenterates, let me tell you the classification here is done based on what type of body form or the zooid is existing in the organisms. So here let me tell you, polyp and medusa are the two forms which we can find. Based on dominance of whether the polyp form or the dominance of the medusa form or both, we classify them into three classes. Class 1 we have hydrozoa, then we have class 2 the scyphozoa, and the class 3 anthozoa or actinozoa. So under the first hydrozoa, so here this form is dominated by both the polyp form as well as the medusae form, but few of them will show in fact the both forms. Let me tell you, see, we have here hydra, which is a polyp form. For example, Obelia shows both polyp and the medusa form. Physalia shows more than two forms. So that is, they show polymorphism here. So both here also you can find the polyp and the medusa form. Other than that, we also have examples as Velella and Millepora. To go with that, we have second class as Scyphozoa. So here the medusae form is more dominant, but in very rare conditions we do also find the polyp form. So example is the jellyfish or the Aurelia and the rhizostoma. Finally, we have the anthozoa or the actinozoa, where the polyp form is dominant, medusae form is completely absent. We don't find medusae form at all. So examples here, note down, we have Gorgonia, which is also referred to as sea fan. We have Mandrina, brain coral. Fungi is also referred to as mushroom coral. Then we have Pennatula, which is referred to as sea pen or sea feather. Then we have Tubipora, organ pipe coral. Alcyonium, dead man's finger we refer them to as, to go with Adamsia, sea anemone, and Corallium, which is called as the red coral. Dear students, all this does not show the medusae form, they are dominated only by the polyp form. So these are the classifications of the coelentrates or the cnidarians. Good morning, dear students. In today's class, let us discuss about one more important phylum, that is Ctenophora. If you remember, in the previous class, I had told that many authors they have included Ctenophora alongside Coelenterata. Even in fact, Polyphera was also included, and they formed these three under one group. But now, there are many authors. Let me tell you, Georges Cuvier, who in fact coined the term Ctenophora, has separately described a phylum, invertebrate phylum called as Ctenophora. So, these are also referred to as the organisms which bear the comb plates. Very important characteristic which we need to take into consideration. Furthermore, dear students, we generally refer them to as comb jellies or comb walnuts also we can refer it to as. So remember, they have comb plates. This is the character. Because of this character, they are referred to as comb jellies and comb walnuts. Almost throughout the world, they can be seen in the marine waters. When I say marine waters, they are distributed well across the sea. And to move on, let me also tell you, these comb plates are the fusion of many cilia, the finger-like projections, which in fact are fused and they help in locomotion. So remember this point, I shall come back to this again. So furthermore, this phylum includes around 50 species, only 50 species of animals. It's a very smallest phylum, in fact we can find among the animal kingdom. So further, let me tell you few of the characteristic features of this phylum, Ctenophora. When we consider their characteristic feature, first comes into fore their habitat. When we consider this, let me tell you, most of them are marine. So in fact, we can use the term exclusively marine. They are not present in the fresh water at all. They are present only in the marine waters. So this is their habitat. So moving to their behavior or habit, let me tell you, they are pelagic. So what do we mean by pelagic? Here, pelagic refers to the organisms or the animals which dwell, which in fact swim freely in the open sea. So that is what we call pelagic. So most of them are pelagic. Few of them can also be sessile. So we know that sessile here is something the organism requires for its attachment, what we call it as the substratum. In fact, in most of the cases, these organisms are attached permanently to the substratum, deriving its nutrition. So this is also one of the behavior which we can find, or the habit which we can find with respect to the ctenophores. Further, dear friends, other than these two, we don't find colonies here. No colony formations can be seen with respect to ctenophores. Even polymorphism cannot be seen here. So I had discussed about polymorphism in the previous class. That is, an individual, if it exists in more than two forms, that is, if it has, as we have discussed in case of coelentrates, polyp and medusa, and in fact continuously through asexual and sexual means. For example, polyp through asexual means forms medusa, and medusa through sexual means forms polyp. That's what we call alternation of generation as well. So, and that in many forms can be seen, as was seen in Physalia. So that cannot be seen here. So even alternation of generation is also not seen with respect to the ctenophores. Further moving on, dear students, let me discuss about their body organization. So when we consider this, let me tell you, they have tissue grade of organization. That means to say the cells organized to form the tissues, and tissues perform overall all the functions of the body. So this is one important aspect. Then moving on to the body wall. The body wall here generally is diploblastic in nature. So when I say diploblastic, we all know that the body wall is made up of the ectoderm and the endoderm. To go with, the mesoglea, the cavity which generally we can find here. In some certain times we generally see non-cellular, the polysaccharides deposited in the mesoglial region. So this is the ectoderm and this is the endoderm. Only these two are the prominent body walls which can be seen with respect to the organisms, that is ctenophores. Let me tell you, dear students, that the body is generally very transparent and it is very delicate and as well as soft. So this is also one of the important points you need to consider. So moving on further, let me tell you the body symmetry. So when we consider the body symmetry, they are generally biradially symmetrical organisms. So we can find biradial symmetry. That means to say an organism can be divided into two equal halves from the plane passing through the center only in one direction. So that's what we call biradial symmetry, which can be seen with respect to all the organisms in case of ctenophora. So further, dear friends, you also note that these organisms are generally carnivores. When I say carnivores, they are dependent on the other living organisms for their survival. They catch the organisms as their prey and they consume it. Hence they are carnivorous. And they show an important property called as bioluminescence. So what is this special character? So that means to say living organisms emit light from their body, which is generally not seen in much of the organisms. So this is an important characteristic as well with respect to ctenophores. They have enzymes like, for example, luciferase, and luciferin. So through these enzymes, they show the emission of light through their body. And in fact, further I can say few of them are phosphorescent as well. When I say phosphorescent, let me tell you that as generally these organisms are emitting light, in fact, and do not produce heat, just in the dark, very light, very what we can say clear and without heat the light is produced. So that can be referred to as phosphorescent. So bioluminescence and without heat the light is produced phosphorescent. So these characters can also be seen with respect to these organisms. Further, dear friends, let us move ahead. Let us discuss about comb plates. So as I said you earlier, they are recognized by this name, comb jellies, or in fact comb walnuts also we can refer them into as. So what is the reason? See, there are 8 vertical rows of comb plates which can be seen arising from their body. So these comb plates are, as I said you, fusion of cilia. Many cilia fuse together and they perform the activity of locomotion. And note one point here, dear ctenophores are the largest organisms which move with the help of cilia. There are no other organisms which bear cilia and as largest as ctenophores. So this is one important characteristic. And one more, let me tell you, they have coloblasts. So first let me tell you that they bear solid, long structures which arise from their body called as tentacles. These tentacles have the specialized cells called as coloblasts, or we can also tell them as lasso cells or adhesive cells. These cells, either you can refer it as coloblasts or lasso cells or adhesive cells. So they, in fact, as they are present in the tentacles, through these cells, the activity of catching prey and also, it helps in their defense. To protect themselves from the predators, these coloblasts are important. Furthermore, let us discuss about their digestion or digestive system. Dear students, the digestion starts from the mouth, which is in fact the first part, and it moves on to the stomodium. So in fact here stomodium refers to nothing but it is like a pharynx. Pharynx, as we all know, is in our body it acts like common passage for air and water. In the similar manner, after mouth we can find the pharynx in ctenophores. After this, dear students, we find very complex gastrovascular cavity. So further gastrovascular cavity leads to aboral anal pores. Here aboral means, in fact, see here aboral refers to aboral pores which gastrovascular cavity leads to. This means to say that these are away from the mouth. Opposite to the mouth we call aboral. So oral is mouth is situated. Aboral anal pores are situated with respect to the ctenophores. So remember this. And further, let me tell you that they show both intracellular as well as extracellular digestion. So we know intra here refers to inside the cell. So digestion occurs inside the cell or even outside the cell. So further, as these organisms are also primitive when compared to so many other phylums we have, so they don't possess the skeletal system. See, dear friends, let me tell you, before these ctenophores were classified under coelenterids. So coelenterids possess the skeleton which secretes coral. So the skeleton itself is referred to as coral there. Corals accumulate to form coral islands in case of coelenterids, which we do not find here. Skeletal system is generally absent. Even we don't find excretory system. Respiratory system is also absent to go with even circulatory system. So they are very primitive organisms. In fact, we can refer them to as they do not possess their skeletal system, the excretory system to eliminate the waste outside the body. Respiration is also absent here to go with the circulatory system as well. So these four we do not find at all with respect to ctenophora. And further, dear friends, here one more important aspect, let me tell you. Nervous tissues can be found here. So they are generally diffused. So what do we mean by diffuse here? Diffuse means they are widely distributed in the body. So statocyst is the nervous tissue which we can find with respect to some of the ctenophores. This statocyst is in fact acts as sensory receptor. So it has the ability to sense the changes in the environment. With the help of statocyst, these ctenophores can perform their sensory activities to certain extent, but not as sophisticated as the developed organisms. Further, dear friends, see, we are moving ahead with the reproduction. So when we consider reproduction here, these organisms are monoecious, or in simple sense you can refer them to as bisexual organisms, or other term, the best term to describe them are hermaphrodites. So the organisms which possess both the male as well as the female sex organs or the gonads are referred to as hermaphrodites or monoecious organisms. And of course, in this we can find that, and generally the sex organs or the gonads are endodermal. So what do we mean by here this term endodermal? So we know that we have three primary germ layers: the outer ectoderm, middle mesoderm, and the inner endoderm. So the gonads generally arise from the inner layer, that is the endoderm, that is the inner layer of the primary germ layer. So further, dear friends, so remember, they do not have asexual reproduction. No asexual reproduction can be seen here. So I have mentioned so many points since the beginning. They don't have alternation of generation, they don't show polymorphism, they do not form colonies, and they also don't have asexual reproduction. They don't form corals, okay, because they are similar organisms when compared to coelenterate. Even though, let me tell you, the ctenophores, coelenterates and polyphenols, the water passes through them, hence many authors had included them under as a single phylum, but in fact because of the differences which we can find, they show bioluminescence, they have comb plates, that's why it is classified as a separate organism. And limited organisms we have here, dear students, around 50, only 50 species of organisms we can find here. Fine. So moving ahead, let me tell you about development. When we consider development, so they show indirect development. So they have to pass through the metamorphic changes. They have to show the larval stages in their life cycle. They have a larva called cdipid larva. Cdipid is the larva of ctenophores. Remember that. And to move further, let me talk about even fertilization. So fertilization means to say the process, event which helps in the fusion of male and female gametes. So here it is external. That means the fusion of male and female gametes occurs outside the female body. That is what the fertilization here is about. Further, dear friends, let me give you a few examples for the ctenophores. So you can have many examples. Hormifora. Okay, so you can have Tenoplana, Cenoplana, then Velamen. You can have Barrow. So these are few examples which can be considered with respect to the phylum Ctenophora. It's a primitive phylum, dear students. And further, I'll let you know about these organisms, what is their common name, zoological name, through pictorial representation. Thank you very much.